So there are several really important characteristics of a good measurement. The first is, and this might sound trivial, but it's not, is that it actually measures what you're intending for it to measure. A lot of the concepts that we're interested in, a lot of the outcomes that we're interested in public sector management are incredibly hard to measure. If you're in a Ministry of Finance, how do you know whether your unit is doing its job effectively? It's very hard to know that. You'll have some subjective judgment about that, but quantifying that and putting that into a measure is very hard. For others, it might be slightly easier, but still very contentious. Think about a teacher, the extent to which a teacher is effective at teaching school children, for instance. You might have standardized tests, for instance. You might have some output indicators, the extent to which that teacher is actually going to school, the number of kids in the school, the number of hours of classroom learning, for instance. But whether you're really getting at learning might still be contested. So the first thing you want to make sure when you have a measure is you want to be clear that it really measures the outcome that you're intending for it to measure. And for some outcomes, that's easier. For other outcomes, it's harder. The second thing you then want to make sure is that your measure is useful for policymakers. So some measures are too abstract or not actually manipulable by policies, by reforms. Whereas others, measures of, say, the share of people that apply for a job through advertisements are very actionable. You can start advertising more jobs, for instance, and as a result of that, that measure goes up. So you have to think about the extent to which your measure can actually measure the outcome you're interested in, or the concept you're interested in. You want to think about whether the measure is actionable. So could you plausibly shape this measure with reforms or with policies? And then you want to think about whether you can get an unbiased measurement of this measure. And this matters because for quite a lot of concepts, particularly when you think about what your staff is doing, you might be worried that the types of measures that you get might not be objective, truthful measures. Think about integrity, for instance. Measuring integrity of public servants is really hard because if I ask you whether you're ethical, you're likely to tell me that you're ethical irrespective of whether you are. And so there are techniques that help us measure these concepts harder, but you always want to be mindful about the extent to which they really get at a measure in an unbiased and objective manner. And so measurement is not easy, but if you do it well, it'll tell you something new about public sector management and something really important about whether your intervention is working or not. So it's worth working hard on it.